In today's episode, we're going over the extraordinary journey of Leo. We're going to take it back to the beginning where he was sold on eBay at the age of 15 to creating and selling a successful children's company. We're also going to talk about why he's jumping into the short-term rental space and also how he's able to negotiate a 13-unit deal in one go. Leo's an extremely successful entrepreneur who's done and seen it all. So with that being said, let's get into the episode. All right, we got Leo here. So wanted to bring Leo on just because, he has a really cool story. He's in the negotiation phases of locking up 13 units in one deal. And this is for your very first deal, right, Leo?
So I have 4 units already that I kind of going, and then the 9 more units that I am negotiating right now with the same building.
Okay, awesome. So, 13 deals, within like the span of a few months. Crazy story. So before we get into all that, let's first kind of take a step back and talk more about your background, what you do for a living, and then, what kind of made you transition into wanting to start your own business here.
Yeah, for sure. So I started like way back. So I'm 35. I started when I was, probably my first venture was when I was 15 or 16 years old, and I was doing eBay. So, just buying Blu-ray discs, jerseys, just a whole bunch of just different jeans and things like that, and basically reselling them on eBay. And eventually that turned into a little company me and my cousin started called Snap and Sold. And I'm not proud of it because it didn't do well. But what we're going to do is just basically gather everyone's garage items and try to sell them on eBay and give them a little bit of money. And then eventually that didn't work out for us. So we did close that down. And then I guess my biggest work on my biggest success so far has been a children's company, nightlight company that I built and sold. It's called Blue World. And maybe if you have children, you've seen us, the little silicone, little night lights made out of like rubbery soft materials, and they're rechargeable. You can tap them, and kids love them, and parents love them. And so I built that company. But in between that and eBay, I had the opportunity to kind of travel, and I've worked in different countries and done just a whole bunch of different stuff in just general e-commerce and not physical businesses as well. I helped set up a cafeteria, a nail salon in a different country. And then I got into Amazon, and that's kind of how I identified like this opportunity in this children's nightlight space. And so I started creating this nightlight, which eventually became really popular in the US. And so a couple of years ago, I made an exit out of that. And I thought, hey, you know what? The US is not that great. I'm going to go live in Europe for a bit. So I moved to Europe for 2 years. Didn't really like it. It was a little bit too slow for me. I like to work and to build things and stuff. And where I moved in Europe and Spain was a little bit too slow for that. Like they don't really, it's more of a little relaxed lifestyle there and not so much trying to progress. And so we moved back here. And so I just basically just got started this summer with this whole thing. I guess the reason I got started in this is because I've had sort of the opportunity in my life to travel from like the very, very budget, like $5 a day, I had no cell phone, staying in places with no electricity, eating, fresh chicken eggs and beans, and just exploring the world. And then I've also had the opposite end of that where, I'm flying private planes, Maldives, South of France, all that stuff. And so I feel like I probably stayed in close to 1,000 hotels and Airbnbs right now. And so when I walk into a new place, I really know, like, depending on the type of guest, like what exactly that guest is going to need in order to kind of create that, that perfect experience for them. And so that's kind of just, I love travel. I love setting. I think that I eventually want to do more unique experiences than I want to do like arbitrage, because I feel like that's kind of where the passion really is. So yeah, I basically just took a whole bunch, I took courses. I signed up to yours, a couple others, went to a few seminars over the summer. And then maybe 2 months in, I was already in Cleveland, signing these units.
There's a lot to unpack there. Sounds like kind of always had that entrepreneur story, the spirit, all the way from when you were like, pretty young. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about like what made you want to go all in on this business, versus, because obviously you've started so many other, e-commerce, had successful exits. Like what made you kind of, have made your focus on this business here?
This is, first, you're looking at a guy who's like fully in the zone of what they want to do. Like there's nothing else I want to do. Like I want to build unique experiences. I want to transition into like hotels and resorts. Like I don't know if you've seen, like you put a few cabins and you connect them as like I want to create basically an unforgettable experience for people in the US. I feel like all over Europe and the rest of the world, you can go somewhere and have this amazing experience. But in the US, we're kind of behind on that a little bit. And I just want to create, like, this is just fully passion. Like I want to do this, like no matter, I'm gonna like risk everything to try to do this. And I feel like I'm equipped enough with just all the experience from travel and business that I should be able to do okay. But yeah, just the general drive here is that I want to build like truly unique hotels, experiences. Like I don't know if you've ever seen, like in Switzerland, they have those like slow moving roller coasters that go through the mountains, and they're really slow, and they're like absolutely beautiful. And so like we don't have anything like that in the US. Like why? We have all these amazing national parks. The US is full of like natural like beauty that the rest of Europe, just like for example in Europe, like, they don't have that. And we just don't really, and there's so many people, I noticed that like in America, we don't really like to go outside of America to travel very much. Like we like to stay in America. We want to do like a weekend getaway, and we just don't have a lot of that. And I feel like there's just so much, like, there's so many different prefab homes coming out and unique structures of all kinds that are just amazing and awesome, and putting them together and adding some amenities in the middle, and then creating like, building on top of that. Maybe there's a zip line later, maybe there's, a restaurant or something, and it's just all combining into this one amazing, unique experience that could be well known all over the US. And I know I'm thinking pretty big here, but this is kind of the dream right here. So that's kind of what got me into it. And I love travel. I love discovering new places that people, don't know, and spiritually growing from, these new types of places. That's why I did the whole like budget trip in Central America, where, I was just going from place to place. And yeah, it really helped me grow. And I want to provide that kind of experience to others.
Yeah, I mean, just the way hearing you talk, it sounds like it's kind of like your passion meets, like an opportunity, right? And like that's
for sure.
When those two things collide, magic can happen for sure. So super excited. We can obviously talk about that here as well. So let's talk about those 4 units I know that you currently have. So how did that deal come to be? Like, how did you, kind of get, like, what gravitated you towards the market? And also, how did you talk to, the management company to secure those?
Yeah. So again, I do not recommend doing it this way. But basically what I did was, I'm sitting at a conference in Texas, and this is before I get started, and I'm feeling really good. Like, I'm learning all this stuff, and I feel really confident. And one of the other attendees who's a little bit more experienced, they have more units and everything. And they were telling me about this, Cleveland, and these units that they have, but they don't really want them. Like they're going to elsewhere. And so he starts telling me like, he can give me the units for a small fee, like a referral. And the person who was giving the sort of the conference, we did the numbers and everything looked good. I'm like, okay, I'll take the units. And so, I buy the units off of him, and right from that conference, I fly directly to Cleveland. Now, keep in mind, there's nothing. There's no business. There's nothing. So on the way to Cleveland, I'm trying to like figure everything out, because I'm going there to apparently receive what was supposed to be 5 units. So I get to Cleveland, I go into the admin office, and, we talk and everything. And apparently what turns out to be is I'm not getting all 5 units, because they only allow 4 units per operator, and you can only get one every 2 weeks. So my original thought was that, I'm feeling so good after this conference. I'm going to fly in there 10 days. I'm going to be done. I'm going to have, all my units set up. Everything's going to be good in 10 days, and I'm going to go back home. So I get to Cleveland, I find out, now it's one every 2 weeks. The terms weren't kind of what I was, what I initially went into it thinking that they were. And so I had to kind of refigure out how I'm going to do this, because now all these units are coming on, every 2 weeks. And now I either have to stay here, or I have to find an operational manager on the ground to kind of build out the units. And so I started looking for a cleaning crew, looking for an operational person. And in the end of all of this, I stayed in Cleveland for 3 weeks to set up the first 2 units, and then the rest of them actually got set up without me. And so the way that it went is I basically did most of the things myself for the first 2 units, picking out the furniture and all that type of stuff. And then I did manage to find somebody on the ground over there who, based on the formula that I had already created over the 3 weeks, was able to just repeat it for the future, for the next 2 units.
So for those 4 units that you have live right now, what are like the cash flow numbers looking like on those properties?
So the revenue for the 1 bedrooms is about 4,500, 2 bedrooms, 5,500. And then as far as like my expenses go, the 1 bedrooms are around 3K, and the 2 bedrooms, last one was 3,200. I'm not at parking yet, which I think is going to do really good as well. So I guess profit right now, 1 bedroom's around 1,500, 2 bedrooms about 2,500 is where I'm currently standing. And it hasn't even been a long run. I only have nearly 1 month of data, just September, pretty much.
And so, I mean, you get, 9 more of those, multiply that by 15, 2,500 each, like that's like a full-blown business, and you're going to continue to scale. So I think a lot of you, for me, initially, when I started getting to, short-term rentals, like my first fear, number one, because I've been in real estate, done flipping, wholesaling, all the, business models within it. Like I was worried about the operational side of the business, right? Like I have to go and clean these units if like someone calls in sick, like all these worries. And so people like don't believe me when I'm like, I literally spend, 30 minutes, sometimes like an hour per week to manage, my portfolio, once you kind of hire the right teams in place. So like how often do you spend per week on this business? And then once everything's set up, obviously, and then, how did you build out those, SOPs, those teams and all that?
If you're talking about the whole business as a whole, so right now I'm not just doing the arbitrage. I built out sort of my own custom research process for where I want to put cabins. So I hired a team to just basically do like data entry research pretty much all day. And so I'm going to leave that to the side. As far as just those units with the arbitrage, what I'm doing as a whole is it's full time. I mean, I'm working pretty much all day, every day. But as far as managing those 40 units goes, if I wasn't negotiating, trying to add more units and stuff, it's probably honestly maybe an hour, maybe two a week if I wasn't trying to grow it, right? Because so basically when I was in Cleveland, I was building out the SOPs, just getting things onto like Monday.com, figuring out like creating a Slack account, going to hire like the VAs. Like a lot of these networks come in like, we have VAs, they're 800 a month, and you get two VAs, 1,600 a month. But I didn't want to do that. So because of the previous business experience, I knew that I could do that quickly without me and probably cheaper. And so I found all these VAs that I needed at 400 a month to do pretty much the same thing. A little bit of training, that's okay. I mean, I'm saving, 800 a month. So I hired someone, plugged her into Slack, plugged her into Monday.com once I had already written out all the, the SOPs and everything. And so she just started following, and, me and her kind of, the first unit came on and the second unit came up, and we just co-managed it, I guess, until the fourth unit, which I added a second person at that point. Before that, it was just me and her. I was on the ground in Cleveland, trying to hire this operational person so that when I left, someone could take over. The cleaning team, honestly, I got super lucky. Like I think it was the first or second cleaning crew that I spoke to. I didn't do a tour or anything. I wanted to work with like a solid team, like who actually cleans in Cleveland, and has like multiple people. I could just talk to one person, and I'd have to. I don't know how Turo works. Like I looked at it, it looked like it was a bit complicated. Like every single time it's a different cleaner, and so they're not going to know exactly like where they're in and like what inside the apartment needs to go where. And then you can make checklists and stuff, and I don't know that, but I just basically met with the cleaner, the guy who owns that company, went over exactly like I told him like it's it's going to be this is super high standards. Like this is exactly how everything needs to be placed. Like we did the video, we did a checklist together, and he was able to just pretty much haven't had any issues with cleaning. Then we went and with the operational management person that I hired together to a storage unit. We found a storage unit we liked, signed up for it. I had the VAs reroute all the Amazon account, all that stuff to the storage unit, so that for future units we can just have everything go directly to storage. The operational person comes in there with the assembly team. They assemble everything in the storage unit, and this is because we do not want to clog the building's mail room with 50 like all the other. Like, I constantly am seeing messages from the building. Your packages are in the mail room, not for mine anymore. Mine are not done anymore, but like everybody else's, and so they have to. I feel like if you're clogging up their mail room with all their packages, you're not really providing value. You're taking away value from their operation, and so I didn't want that. And it turned out to be easier just to assemble everything in the storage unit because there's less trash. So they assembled everything in storage, put it on a truck, take it to the unit, assemble it. Cleaner comes in, does we do the count. So I'm on the phone, or the VA is on the phone, and he's over there. We're doing like the inventory count, making sure everything's good, putting all the sheets on the beds. Operational manager comes in, make sure everything's clean, looks good, to the standards that I explained to her, like exactly how things need to be. We do a little video tour. Next day, photographer comes in, takes all the pictures that we need, and the cycle, I guess the next day we list, connected to Guesty and all that stuff afterwards. And then that's pretty much it. That's the whole cycle. And we just pretty much repeat after that for future units. So any new units that, I get in Cleveland, I just plug them into this exact system and,
yeah, that's awesome, man. Like, that's a lot of good stuff. Rewind the past 3 minutes or so, Leo talking, like that's a lot of good stuff about thinking about this from a business perspective, right? Like, what are you going to do to make sure that this is streamlined, especially if you're going to continue to scale, within that market, having those SOPs and procedures, all that stuff in place is going to be plug and play for, future units. So love that you're thinking, from the big picture there. And obviously the entrepreneur background helps for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Otherwise for sure. There's definitely help in the entrepreneur. I was already thinking before I even, opened the LLC, I want to make sure that I make this so that it's comfortable for me to scale to like 100 plus units, or, do this other thing that I want with the cabins or other things potentially as well. So yeah, it did definitely help.
So to wrap this up, what would you say to someone that, is like playing with the idea, starting this business? What's some pieces of advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I would say that if you've had a business before, go for it. If you haven't had a business before, still go for it. It's great. It's just I would not recommend doing like an out of state where, you're flying over there and trying to do it somewhere else. I would say that it's probably going to be easier if you do it locally at first. I honestly don't think, like, coming from the other company that I was running, it just had so many moving parts, press and inventory and warehouses. And then at some point, like Disney approached us and GameStop wanted a unique line for them. And there's just so many moving parts that I was just overwhelmed all the time. With this business, I feel like the model isn't as complicated. There's as many moving parts. So literally, if people just follow exactly what you teach, obviously there's a little more to like when you start to get into it a little bit, there's a few things, but if they follow kind of exactly what you teach, then they'll do what I did, which is don't buy deferrals. It's stupid. I only did it because like I was like so excited and I knew I was trying to fly there and just do it. Don't do that. You find your own units. The research isn't that complicated. Don't get into like analysis paralysis. Find something good in your area, just go for it. I think those are probably the main things.